Hey, all, Sean Maloney, Digital Business Masters. Welcome to another DBM Strategy call, coming towards mid-September 2025. Time's moving quickly, and we're up for a very, very large quarter and a half. So the rest of 2025 is expected to be very, very significant for all sorts of reasons we'll talk about in the first part of this call. Welcome if you're listening to this for the first time over on YouTube. Hit the bell, hit the like, make sure that you keep up with what we do. Because in part two, which is over on the Academy, that's when we put the rubber on the road and show you how to connect all the macro and geopolitical messages into a real life, successful digital business. It is a business. Yeah, it's not a hobby. It's not something you do when you feel like it. It's a business. So the whole model exists. It's been in existence for many, many, many years. We're very successful with it. Hence, we're so proud and confident about what it is that we do. The challenge, of course, just like you are when you're working as a gym instructor, I suppose, you're trying to get people to follow the steps and stay following the steps, not giving up when they get a bit tired. So the whole idea is for us to pull all this together once a week. We do this every Monday so that you've got the big picture and then how it all connects together. And then you can start to create the future. We can't predict the future, but we can certainly create it. That's no question about that whatsoever. One thing we can't also do is give you any advice. We're not interested in giving you advice. If you want to go and get advice, go and speak to your financial planner, go and speak to your advisors, go and speak to your boss, go and speak to your bank. They'll give you plenty of advice. If that's working for you, good. If it's not, maybe start to think about doing something a bit differently. And that starts with education. It starts with self-responsibility. It starts with getting out there and doing things under your own control. But it all stems from having the right mindset and the right skills. Hence, many years ago now, we set up the Academy division of DBM. That basically, its only purpose is to help people stop exchanging skill and energy for devaluing fiat currency. If you don't know what fiat currency is, then go over to the where to start section, or better still, get involved with the Wealth Builder series over at DBM Academy, and we'll teach you all about the challenges of fiat currency. But if you're still converting energy and skill to devaluing fiat currency and then using that to buy liabilities, and you're wondering in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s why you've still got more month than money, then you need to do better. You need to really understand what the wealthy do, which is to convert a proportion of their energy and effort through currency, of course, into accretive assets. Wealth is no longer in saving. It hasn't been for decades. Wealth is in accrual of assets that appreciate. And the crazy thing is they appreciate in price mainly because it takes more dollars to acquire them as dollars, euros, and pounds devalue in their purchasing power. That's how crazy this is. So once you've got that momentum, that critical mass of an asset base, you can start to cash flow from that. I'll show you all about that in part two. We've got this coming at us all angles. We know exactly how to manage liquidity events. We know exactly how to make sure we're prepared for price appreciation and reallocation, and how to stake, and how to work on Forex, and how to organize all sorts of cash flowing activities that we then take a proportion of to fund liabilities. Just like a business does, but you're doing it in your own as a person, right? So it's very important to understand this, which is why I talk about it every single week. Then people ask, well, that sounds fine, well and good, but what does it look like in practice? Well, that's what part two is about. But the churches we build it on, which are proving themselves time and time and time again, are predominantly Bitcoin, obviously. Go and have a look at the average CAGR, compound annual growth rate for Bitcoin over the past 14 years. Go and research it. And then when your brother-in-law gets all clever with you, or some advisor, or some boss, then you can show them facts, right? Everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. So we just dollar cost average Bitcoin. We use that then to create a balance sheet that builds up in value. And then we take a proportion of those balance sheet values and push them over to our P&L. The P&L is made up of multiple different things, as we talk about in part two. but predominantly it's smart contract based and altcoin based. There's a distinct difference between the two, but there are technologies now that are combining both together very successfully. So the idea is for you to choose where you want to go, build out a business plan. That is obviously best done by copying somebody who's already done it. And then the rest of it is up to you. What fortitude have you got? What resilience have you got? What minerals are you made of? How determined are you? That's a different thing. That's why we talk about mindset and skills. But the business model is absolute, totally proven, and now it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger as the world finally realizes, slowly but surely, that people are going to have to take independent control of their futures and stop relying 100% on bosses, banks, and governments. They obviously don't know what they're doing. Or if they do, and they're complicit rather than being ignorant, if they are truly complicit and they are truly undermining the benefit of people's lives, then that is equally as bad as ignorance. So either way, we have to do something about it, and nobody's going to do it for you. Hence, we're so passionate about helping as many people as we can. To do that, we figured out many years ago. We're eons old in this industry. DBM's been around well over a decade. The Academy division, thanks to some very clever, determined, professional people, has now created itself into a very robust system built on 4 areas of steps, let's say, right? The whole idea is for you to work from mindset all the way up to income. Then the 5th step is the bit that most people want, but few people get to or understand, even when they do get there, which is wealth. But the 4 we focus on, obviously, predominantly, are the mindset, the skills. That's where a lot of people fall down, as you'd expect. Then you go into systems, as we'll talk about, and then the income flows, which is what I just described with those 3 pillars. Now, the idea of this model is that you go through this from start to finish. Don't leapfrog like a lot of people try and do. They'll speculate, they'll throw a lot in just to get in quick and easy. They want everything to work, and when it doesn't work, they get upset and they wonder why it's got not worked, and most of it's down to them. Yeah, the whole idea is to manage it. Treat these projects like machines in a factory. You're not always going to get the right machines. It's not always going to be the right fit for the market. It's not always going to work first time. You've got to be on it. Training yourself, training your people, getting organized. It's very much like a factory. Now, to simplify this, over the past few months, we've decided that we're going to put in, now with AI, because AI makes a lot of things very, very cost effective, which means we can keep our prices down, the DBM Wealth Builder series. Now, if you upgrade to that as an existing skills subscriber, you get access to it. Or you can just come in, and if you're new, listening to this for the first time, it's $25 and you get access to the basic end of what that program is. The whole idea then is that you use the teachings of that particular series to put yourself on the right foot over 12 months, and then you can start to build up to get closer and closer contact with the people around you that have already done this, right? So we've got DBM Hub, we've got the workspaces every day of the week, 9 hours a week. That's where the most successful people are, because they're constantly strategizing. And you know what? It's not really about the numbers at that level, even though that's very useful. It's more about accountability. A lot of the workspace people help each other stay accountable. That's where the real success is. That's why mindset is the start of the process. So this model works. We've been around for years. We're not going anywhere. We know what we're doing. If I can make one person successful every week, I've done my job. And if we can do it for one person, we can do it for 1 million people, right? So we'll just keep going while the world wakes up to self-sovereignty on digital assets. It's slowly doing it, but it's taking a bit of time because we've had 40, 50 years in our generation of people being hamstrung by the system. It's not good enough. It has to change. The Wealth Builder series I already mentioned, get plugged in, get upgraded, don't miss the boat. It's already started. September's the first month of 12, and it'll roll and roll and roll. Obviously, you can get involved whenever you like, but don't burn daylight. The best decisions were made 20 years ago. The second best ones are made today. Get on with it. Why? Well, because this is facing us, right? This one page that says everything you need to know with regards to what's going on the macro level. And all we do, of course, is bite-size it. Yeah, we just turn it into steps through the subscription model, and people then have the responsibility to go through it and do what they want to do. You're all big boys and girls. But the big picture is always important to understand. And all we do is we take a trajectory. So if we're somewhere now, and we can look backwards and look at all this vindication, all this proof, all this evidence of real, actual things that actually happen. This is just talking about Bitcoin. So if we know where we are and we know where we've been, then we can take a trajectory. And that's how you create the future for yourself. And anybody who's been dollar cost averaging Bitcoin as long as this chart, right, is way, 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 way ahead. Way ahead. We used to just talk about owning one Bitcoin. People who were working with us back here in 2016, 17, etc. I mean, we got very excited here. We thought we were geniuses at $15,000 of Bitcoin. Yeah, if you've been dollar cost averaging all the way through because you understood this technology as monetary energy, as a nuclear fusion system in your own possession, if you understood that, then you are now made for life with one Bitcoin. You don't need one Bitcoin anymore, as it happens. So now we talk about owning 0.1 Bitcoin. Either way, you need to build that on your private balance sheet. And then you just let this thing take its shape. But the clever bit is what we'll talk about in part 2, where we constantly maneuver that growth, the globally connected balance sheet that is Bitcoin. We have the world's biggest balance sheet connected on our individual balance sheets as individual people and business owners. Can you say any other industry that allows you to do that? The whole point is to go with it. And it used to be just us alone. It used to be just a few of us, entrepreneurs, idealists, people with ideas, people wanting to make a difference, people sick to death of the narrative that's been alive and kicking since 1971, crucifying people's life opportunity. We just decided we've had enough. And all we did was convert energy into positivity. And now, as we ideally wanted, didn't really expect it, but things that you focus on tend to come true if you keep focused hard enough, right? And all of a sudden, just this last year, to be fair, 2024, 25, the institutions, the corporations, the big influencers of the world, if you want to put it that way, are now well into this themselves. I'll talk about some of the treasury companies and how much Bitcoin they're buying off the market compared to how much Bitcoin is possibly able to enter the market. And then you see why the price gets discovered endlessly. We always end up with higher lows. Higher lows. That's all we want. Higher lows. Nice and steady. Higher lows. Higher lows. Happy with that as long as you understand how to convert that into cash flow. So the big picture for part 1 of this call is all about this. It's all about further evidence, high-level information that we just decide is worthy of mention on this call every week. You know, it's not difficult to find. I could probably talk for 3 hours about this. But we break down the biggest pictures so that you guys can see evidence of what is creating that price discovery just in Bitcoin, which is the core of our business, and then everything else cascades off that. So when you're getting big companies like Treasury there, they're now or having the ambition to at least become Europe's biggest Bitcoin treasury company, backed by the Winklevoss brothers and Nakamoto, right? So big US backers, but they're looking to, they have registered this in Europe. In fact, it's in Amsterdam, which, if you don't know, was the world's first stock market exchange over in Amsterdam. So that's not lost on us. So they've moved very quickly, $147 million of Bitcoin placed on their treasury, and off they go. So they're just another one that's added to MicroStrategy, to all these big treasury companies. Lots of the big countries now have them. Certainly the continents have them. Yeah. And then further on the ground, you get all the liquidity maneuvers going on, which is all about stable coins. So Stripe and Paradigm are incubating their own blockchain. Not sure why they're doing their own blockchain. It's not really necessary, but they are. Either way, they've got their own stable coin payments coming up. Yeah, we're long-standing customers of Stripe, so we know Stripe very, very well. So that's great news. Spot Bitcoin ETF inflows. We're watching this for weeks and months now. Yeah, it's all about the inflows. If you know what's going on over at the ETF level, not that we're a fan of ETFs, we never have been, and we probably never will be, but just as we've done with gold over the years, we know it has a presence and a relevance when it comes to inflows. In other words, people moving devaluing fiat currencies into valued accretive assets such as Bitcoin and gold. So as long as the inflows are coming, we're in, we're quids in. That's how it's so easy for us to just keep dollar cost averaging, no matter what the day-to-day is of something like Bitcoin. We're not interested in day-to-day price. We're interested in a long curve. So we keep an eye on ETF inflows. You should be doing that as well. Strategy. All this excitement on crypto Twitter late last week about Strategy meeting the credentials for the S&P 500. They didn't pass that first round. Lots of discussions, and it's crazy that you let companies like Robinhood in and other such companies that are nowhere near as strong and powerful and ticked all the boxes as Strategy. Then you've got to start questioning this stuff we've been questioning for decades. All right, brinkmanship, who's behind the scenes, who's pulling the levers, blah, blah, blah. We don't get that bothered about it these days. The S&P needs Strategy. Strategy doesn't need S&P, right? Just like the governments and the world of economics needs Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't need the world of economics. So, we're pretty blasé about it these days, but it doesn't matter. I mean, an injection of that coming in would be useful, and it speeds our businesses up, which is why we keep an eye on it. But the whole idea is that it looks like they're going to go again on the 19th of September. In fact, today, Mike Saylor is on CNBC, so we'll see what he's got to say. But either way, it's just nice to be able to see this well ahead of the average person. Yeah. And then start to structure our businesses as little balance sheets in this bigger balance sheet around actual real life leverage. Yeah. That's the point we raise every week on this call. Even whatever you think of the Trump family or the guy himself, even the World Liberty Finance moving as quickly as they are when it comes to their allocation of spot trading and what they've done over the last week in terms of triggering their own liquidity pools around Bitcoin and other assets. That's just all signs that we're in the right side of history and we're moving into a place that you never would have been able to do 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You wouldn't have this communication channel, right? You wouldn't have had anything to do with crypto assets all interconnected on, global balance sheets and everything else. None of that would have existed, but now it does. You've got an absolute duty, in my opinion, to do it for yourself and teach your children how to do it, because this is where it's headed. Go and read the book, The Sovereign Individual. It's all laid out in front of us. It's a case of what we do with that, right? That's the purpose of what we do at DBM. Page 2 of the macro stuff, just a reminder on the right-hand side there, this is what you've got to keep an eye on. I mean, it's all history stuff and everything else, but history never repeats, but it does rhyme, right? So we all know about the fall of Rome with debasement. We all know about the plundering of Spain and Europe in the overprinted currency into existence, basically, and the Brits came along, stole all the gold off the Spanish, and they started printing it into decline as well. And lo and behold, in the 21st century, or most a big part of the 20th century as well, the US, who are the latest empire of the world, have been printing dollars into endless debt. And look where we are today. How have we countered that? Well, we spotted after 2008 that we need to do something for ourselves that's away from that hegemony. And that's exactly what we've done, hence this call. Companies are now starting to do it. They're buying over 1,700 Bitcoin per day at the moment. That's 4 times the daily mining possible issuance that comes from Bitcoin. It can't be any more than 450 a day. That's the beauty of it. It's programmed, absolutely. It's a very, very clever technology that most people still have no clue about. There's no value of Bitcoin, I can't touch it, I can't. No, you need to work harder, mate. You're not understanding what it is in terms of creating monetary energy. Just go and look at Rome, just go and look at Spain, just go and look at the Brits, just go and look at America. Are you telling me you want to carry on in that? Even 40, 50, 60 years into your life? You've got to follow the technology and move with what's happening. And it's right in front of us now in 2025. Metaplanet purchased another 1,000 and odd Bitcoin, bringing its holdings to 20,000 Bitcoin. They're very much, working in the slipstream of Strategy. Never going to be as big a Strategy, but they're moving into gear themselves over in Japan. Fantastic. We've already mentioned a European company doing the same type of thing. Just to echo what I said earlier, with regards to Strategy getting accepted onto the S&P 500, if they manage to close that up, and we're hoping that can happen as early as September, then that'll be another 250,000 Bitcoin over the next 6 months. So Saylor's already said this morning that he doesn't need that maneuver into the S&P to do this. He can borrow as much money as he wants, right? That's the clever thing about what he's done. He's a financial engineer, right, is Carnegie on Bitcoin. So the whole idea is their treasury could easily reach 900,000 Bitcoin, okay? And some of us are indirectly involved with them because we own Strategy stock and we own Strike and Stripe and all these fancy models. Talk about in part 2 with regards to how we cash flow. The bottom line is, if some of the best brains in the world are able to do what these guys are doing, I'm perfectly happy to slipstream them. Thank you very much. Just like we do with the secondary projects we operate with. We're working with the best brains we can find, the best relationships we can find, the best people and systems we can find. We don't have to build it our own. We don't have to go do all the rigmarole of setting your own business up and stock and suppliers and people and all the things you have to do running your own business. In this space, you're interconnected with other people. That's what strategy represents. 4.3 trillion State Street disclosed holding 1.8 billion worth of Bitcoin, which is a new kid on the block. Okay, so again, they're just getting exposure through Master. The Swiss government got exposure through Master as well this week. Yeah, keep an eye on the Swiss. Obviously, they're very wealthy for a reason. Chainlink co-founder just last night actually confirmed successful SEC meeting on chain compliance. Okay, so blockchain rails. We had the big meeting last week. It was a 3-hour. Was it last week or the week before? There was a 3-hour session where the American politicians of the moment sat together, and they were talking about putting a lot of the US government data on blockchain. Right? Now, we've been talking about this for a long time at DBM. All the voting should be done on blockchain. Yeah, banking should be on blockchain. Everything's transparent. You can see what you're doing. Everything's visible. Nobody's got any hiding places. They can't offshore stuff willy-nilly. This is what any sharp, bright government should be doing. Luckily, the US still has that influence that it's going to start that ball rolling, and then the Europeans and the Brits and the other parts of the world will just follow it. They'll just copy. So we're going to end up with this inevitably. And that just makes blockchain part of the fabric and infrastructure of the way people think. And then they think, oh, well, how do I attach myself to that? And that's what Bitcoin is, obviously. Before they even get to some of the stuff we talk about already at DBM over in part 2, right? We're much more sophisticated than just Bitcoin these days. A liquid BTC, we mentioned this a few weeks ago, just at an all-time high. Okay, so that basically means that there's fewer and fewer and fewer assets through Bitcoin now available through exchanges. So that's mounting pressure for this next big move we're expecting. We have anticipated most of this year a $200,000 Bitcoin by the end of this calendar. Whether that's bang on or slightly, we don't really care. Yeah, we're just interested in our 55, 60, 68% CAGR, right? Your job is to manage that through the cut and thrust of what it is, and for that you need critical mass. Right, which is why we talk about liquidity events over in the Academy so much. Geopolitical, real quick, 9% of the Fed, chance of the Fed cutting the rates in September. Now, we've been hearing about this for a long time. A lot of politics going on over there, right? They're just too slow. We know they are. Okay, it's obvious. And there's stuff going on, mainly because they've had that big shock to the system because of the tariffs, right? But they've held on to that now for 6 months. No evidence of that affecting inflation. No evidence of that affecting true prices in American goods and services. We'll find out who's going to be right or wrong or indifferent. Doesn't really matter. By now, as we're going to the second half of 2025, there's no question they're going to have to cut the rates. Every time they cut the rates, and this might be a big one because we've lived since 2022 with quite, some growth in rates, and we've put up with that all through the Bitcoin winter, and now we're out the other side. We can expect this to consolidate and push our asset base even higher because we're being directly affected by the decisions of institutions like the Fed. That's what it is to be closest to the money supply. That's why you need to keep up with what's going on with global politics and macroeconomics. That's part of your job. On the other side of the equation in terms of El Salvador, we've been at this for a long time, 4 years now, amazingly. 4 years to the day, I think, yesterday or today, that they first adopted Bitcoin as legal tender in their country. 4 years, amazing, right? Now, there's still just a little beacon over there doing what they do, but there's other companies like Bhutan and Norway. But Bhutan's a very, very clever case to do what they do quietly. They've got all sorts of big, pressure from India and China and all sorts of stuff, but they've just done what they do quietly. So their Bitcoin reserves are now 40% of their national gross domestic product. 40%. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. And this is why it's so frustrating when you're watching the bureaucrats in Europe and the headless politicians of the UK. Right? They just do not understand how to create sovereign wealth that can be shared by the nation by redistributing energy that's getting wasted all over the place all the time and converting that into a financial dynamo. You just do not understand it. Now, there's people, and we're doing our best as well. We've been to some political rallies recently. We're doing our best to have conversations around this mark with, politicians that frankly have bent the knee, but it doesn't matter. We still have to keep trying. Okay, we've tried to do this locally over many, many years at DBM. We'll keep going. I'd suggest you do the same, because this is not going to change from the top down. Look at Bhutan, look at El Salvador, look at Norway, look at Switzerland. Go with the best in class. Don't get dragged down with people just because of the country you're residing in. Make a difference. Get out there and make it happen. Don't just be run over. China considers yuan-backed stable coins. Okay, I said this last week. They're rolling this out in Hong Kong, but it's moving at pace now. So that's, again, China's big enough to look after itself, obviously. But in terms of what's going on, they're looking at keeping up. They're trying to have the cake and eat it, basically. They want the benefits of exported dollars. They want to stay the factory of the world, but they're not going to get left behind by getting dragged in to a situation where they can't keep up with the hegemony of the US dollar. The US dollar itself is trying to protect itself from CBDCs because it knows that's where the BRICS are headed, and the Europeans are certainly headed there. And there's this standoff at the minute between the global powerhouse in terms of currency. Fact of the matter is, it's futile now. It's futile because all these messages tell us that Bitcoin will become the overarching global, powerhouse, which is why, we do what we do, because we can see this clear as day. Besson doing a great job in many ways, but again, he's bought the coin, etc. So the whole idea is you take it with a pinch of salt, just like you do with Trump. But the Bitcoin reserves that the US are looking to firm up and confirm, so a little bit of, grey area around that, but we're looking to get that confirmed hopefully soon, hopefully this year. And then that's just another shot of confidence coming at us that the biggest economy in the world has a certain amount of Bitcoin. And then the rest of the countries will just follow, just as Vietnam are there. They've just now started to launch their first Bitcoin exchange as of the Vietnamese government, right? And we know Vietnam's part of the reset. We know they're changing their politicians very quickly right now. Some things are afoot, just like it was with Iraq. So the whole idea is to have a position over there. If you don't know what that's all about, then speak to your DBM coaches. SEC wants to open up crypto more to retail through Hester Pierce. We discussed that last week. That's a big one. I've kept it up again this week because retail, the average Joe Sixpack, they're not going to necessarily understand some of the stuff I'm talking about today, and that's okay. It takes quite a lot to plug yourself in, especially if you're sat in commuter traffic and sat on a train or, sat in a cubicle or sat at a machine for 4 or 5 hours a week. You're not going to necessarily listen to this level, are you? Those of you who do, switched on, you'll be absolutely fine. But what Hester Pierce is trying to do is get the retirement funds over to this technology, knowing that most people will be automatically involved then through the retirement, because most people just don't even understand what the retirement is, do they? They don't even know the ratios between bonds and stocks, let alone what's going on with high yield accretive assets. So that's, again, us being in front of the curve, years in front of the curve actually, and being able to ride that up for the rest of our lives because we can see where this is headed. Paraguay to hold a meeting this month, creating their own strategic Bitcoin reserve. So Paraguay is getting involved, watching their neighbour and getting involved. Good for Paraguay. I mentioned Norway. Norway did a great job with North Sea oil. When you compare it to how the Brits squandered it or offshored it most of the point to put it in the hands of the wealthy, despite the crocodile tears from the socialist governments that were in power 3 times. The whole idea of Norway, whichever the colour, they went ahead and kept this thing sacrosanct, which is the way forward, of course. So to wrap it up, and before we go into part 2 that you'll catch over on the link below, over in the Academy, where I put the rubber on the road with the actual things we actually do to convert this knowledge into real life income, remember, you've got this model to work with. And most of all, you should be involved with the Wealth Builder series. Click the link below, $25 a month, and get yourself rolling from mindset all the way over to income and wealth, and you'll be better off for it. Appreciate your time. We'll see you on the next call.